The second round of France's presidential election takes place on the 24th of April, and the polls suggest the race will be close. When Emmanuel Macron became France's youngest ever president in 2017, it sealed a meteoric rise that came less than a year after he launched a centrist political movement called La République en Marche to challenge the traditional parties. He easily defeated Marine Le Pen in the 2017 runoff, winning 66% of the votes. Now, 5 years on, aged 44, he continues to dominate French politics, but the polls suggest this time his far-right rival has a real chance of unseating him from the LC pollers. He faces a far stronger challenge from the reinvigorated leader, has once known the pain of defeat. African affairs analyst Farai Muvuti joins us now to look at the implications of the French presidential elections for Africa. Farai, I want to say thank you very much for joining us here on Newsday. We know France has a massive stake and has a massive interest in Africa. But let's talk about the race. First of all, for you, what do you think will benefit Africa more, having a Le Pen coming in, or probably sticking with what we already know, talking about Emmanuel Macron?
Well, thank you again for having me. I think to Africa, it will not make too much of a difference if we're to go by Macron's record alone. If you're looking at his past record, initially when he got elected, he ran under the theme that he would be much more open to a more universalist approach to Africa, a more partnership-based relationship, and sort of moved away from his former heads of state of France, who in the past have often had a very cynical and very unapologetic attitude towards their colonial legacy. He appeared to want to foster relations, to look at it from a more partnership format. But what we have seen is rather a descaling of that particular relationship and a more aggressive approach in terms of its foreign relations and the geopolitical affairs thereof. The fracturing of relations in the Sahel with Mali and Burkina Faso demonstrate a shift within geopolitical influence and as far as the diminishing influence of France itself. So in terms of results, there is an opening up of more African states looking at a more partnership-driven affair with France. So the two schools of thoughts are, well, whether Macron wins or Le Pen wins, the difference here may be one's international outlook. So, for example, in certain instances where you have the CAF, for example, which is a group of 14 countries that fall under the currency of France and managed by the Reserve Bank of France itself, where you have the questions around whether that will stay or remain. Macron's approach is that it's going to be a decision of the Africans, which of course we see is an argument that is bubbling up. Yet Le Pen seems to suggest that she wants to get rid of it completely. So there are instances in which Africa benefits by having Le Pen and equally doesn't, but at the same time, there are benefits of having Macron as well. So to put a fine point to it, I don't think at this point it will make a fundamental difference because ideologically, they may be different, but not really far apart enough to create a dent of change that will be able to enhance the decolonial project, as it were.
Now, Farah, it seems there is a bitter animosity between France and Russia over Moscow's growing influence in Africa, especially in former French colonies. How do you think Emmanuel Macron will tackle this? That's if he wins the re-election battle.
Well, I think the only way to tackle it would be to have a new look and a new approach to dealing with African leadership, and to equally dealing and France having a relook at its own foreign policy, the one that takes stock of its history. So Russia, for instance, would have greater influence within Africa, and especially within the Sahel region and Mali, because of the contemporary history that they share. But more so, Russia does find itself within the history of the decolonial project. And that history, unfortunately, sits quite well to the advantage of Africa and, well, unfortunately, to the disadvantage of France. So how they handle it is a relook at how they approach African affairs with, of course, a much more reflective view of the colonial legacy that France has. Otherwise, moving forward, there would be that growing influence of Russia will continue as Russia will continue to promote the autonomy of the respective countries within the region, but at the same time guaranteeing the security requirements, which at the end of the day does harm France's strategic outlook of wanting to have a much more autonomous military from Europe. I do not think they'll have any takers if they're failing to contain the issue in Northern Africa.
And really quickly, Farai, before we close the program, it seems that there are lessons that African countries can learn from the French elections. What could those be?
I suppose the lessons that can be taken away here is the changing of culture, and how the France constituency or the France presidency has been led by more the politics of identity. And when it comes to the question of identity, Africa really needs to reassert what its own sense of identity is, as many countries continuously have these competing ideological perspectives, which are not in which class issues, economic issues are now written into the fabric of identity. And as maturing democracies, there are going to be newer problems that we're finding, especially with the young population. These are the complexities of our own issues are going to continuously grow as we mature our democratic practices. But these are also the fault lines of having democracy, whereby a fascist, if you will, racist ideologies can actually rise to the fore of European politics. And we're seeing a surge of this. So it equally shows us that as we shape our democracies, we must be smart about the sort of long-term impact thereof, considering the multiple, what I'd like to call the blossoming complexities of our own political tradition.
I want to say many thanks to you, Farai Muvuti, for sharing your thoughts with us concerning the upcoming elections in France.